Well, hello, Bill.
Hi, David. How are you?
Good. Great to see you again.
Nice to see you.
And welcome to beautiful Lake Nona here in Orlando, Florida.
Thanks for having me.
Had a great day for it. And how's your game been?
Well, it's been very good, David. I've been working on my long game quite a bit, and I've seen a lot of improvement. Starting to score better, but it's still quite inconsistent. I just feel that I don't know what to practice on my short game, and I feel like I'm losing a lot of shots there.
Well, you know, the short game is so important, Bill, that, you know, it's really 50% of the game. So you should be spending 50% of your practice time on and around the greens, because that's really where you're going to see some improvement in your scores. So what I'd like to do today for you is really show you how you can improve your short game through some drills, understanding the technique, and above all else, helping to give you feel, which is what all great short game players have.
Well, after seeing what you've done for the tour players and their short game, I'm certainly anxious to learn.
Well, Bill, I think the thing is what we've got to try to do is really understand how we can break the short game up into separate departments. Okay, now, firstly, I call it a family of four. The first thing we try to do is work on the putting aspect, and then chipping. Those two are tied in together. And we've got pitching, and then sand play. So those four sections, we in actual fact will go into detail, show you how you can practice on them, and really get better. In addition, Bill, after I've covered each aspect, we're going to have a section called Advanced Score Savers. Now, these are shots that I work with some of the low handicap and tour players, and which, if you add to your repertoire, will really help your short game. So let's get to it, shall we?
Let's do it.
Well, this part of the game, Bill, has made strong men weak at the knees.
I understand.
It's often been called a game within a game. So I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to watch you hit a few shots or a few putts from different distances here so I can have a good look at what's going on, all right? So let's start off from about 6 feet, shall we?
All right.
Now you just go ahead and make your normal stroke, and I'll just observe. Don't get nervous now, Bill. All right, well, little inconsistencies there. Is that typical?
That's pretty typical. None of them went in.
Well, let's have a look from 40 feet, shall we?
Okay.
Well, let's see your action on these 40-footers here, Bill.
All right.
Okay, one more, please. We've got some work to do here, Bill.
A little bit.
Well, how are your short putts?
Not so good. I'm a little shaky on those. I get nervous sometimes.
Well, let's have a look.
All right.
Well, these little 3-foot putts can sometimes prove troublesome, Bill. So I'm going to ask you to try to knock one in here for me.
All right.
Funny thing is, you know, the older we get, the longer these 3-footers look.
You're right.
So go ahead. Now, this is for the Open in 1992, so take your time and knock it in. Well, you weren't short, Bill, and you're in a playoff, unfortunately. Well, I think I've seen enough here. There's one more exercise I'd like you to do, Bill, so why don't you join me up here?
All right.
We've laid a chalk line down here for you, Bill, so we can really have a close look at your stroke.
Okay.
Go ahead. You know, one of the key ingredients in good putting is to learn to roll the ball correctly. You always hear players say to other players, oh, good roll. And what that really means is learning to roll the ball end over end, giving it some top spin, which helps to keep the ball on line. If you'll notice, all really good putters tend to hit the ball at the right speed, and the ball seems to maybe even appear to be short of the hole, but all of a sudden it sort of rolls in. That's because it has the right spin on it. So we're going to check what your spin is like, and in order to do that, I've got a 2-tone ball here, and that will really show what's happening with the ball. So why don't you go ahead and put that down, make sure the line is looking directly at the hole there. Okay, give it a go. Well, that one certainly bobbled about a bit, didn't it? Looked like it had a bias on one side of it. Let me show you what should actually happen with the roll, Bill.
All right. You sure make it look easy.
Well, actually, I didn't see the ball roll, Bill, because I try to keep my head down. But in actual fact, I'm sure as you saw the roll of the ball, it rolled very uniformly, end over end. And that is very, very crucial for good putting. So I think what we have to do now is go and analyze your stroke and see if we can get you to this point.
Sounds great.
Okay. In analyzing your stroke, obviously, Bill, we see that through your poor setup, the general tendency is for you to use too much hands and arms. You can see the wrist tends to break down poorly through the ball, and this just causes a lot of inconsistency. So what I'd like to see you do, and which virtually every great putter does these days, is a combination of arms and shoulders. Very little wrist action. Really, any wrist action we have is just purely through the weight of the putter. So in effect here, you can see as I make a practice stroke here, as I move it back, my left shoulder moves down slightly, my right shoulder moves up, and you can see I'm actually using my shoulders to control my stroke. You can see this very clearly, how the arms and shoulders work together. It's not sort of a rocking motion like this, but it certainly is where my left shoulder moves down and then my right shoulder moves through. So let me hit a putt here or two, and you can actually see that. You see the difference there?
Mm-hmm.
And you can see as a result, the left wrist stays nice and firm. I don't even have to think about it.
Right.
So let's have a look at you doing that, if you wouldn't mind. The first thing we're going to do here, Bill, is to get you set up to the ball properly and also check your grip, because remember, as with a full swing, if you set up correctly, you've got much more chance of making a good swing, or in this case, a good stroke. So let's have a look at your grip there. Why don't you just hold it up here for me? So what we have to do is to keep your hands and wrists under control. In other words, keep them very passive. And what I would suggest you do is change your grip slightly to a more conventional putter grip. Okay, so the putting grip basically, Bill, if you can have a look at me here. Okay, what I'm doing is, see, I'm placing it in the palm of my left hand here and getting my left hand around. Can you see how my left hand is around here? Now by putting my right hand on, you can see here, sliding it underneath, and then just lifting my index finger up, my right hand is pretty much a palm grip too. So we've got the hands opposing one another, or the palms opposing one another here, Bill, and it's much more locked in. Okay, right, now, the other thing, obviously, we have to learn to set up to the ball correctly. Now, a little test we do, I want you to make sure that your eyes are over the ball. We saw on your putting stroke how your eyes are actually way outside the ball. I want you to make sure that your eyes are directly on top of the ball, specifically your left eye. Okay, so if you just take your address there, okay, now let's just flex the knees just a little bit there. There we go. So we're going to get ourselves a little bit taller so our arms are hanging a little bit more. There we go. Good. Okay, now I'm just going to drop the ball from your left eye here. Oh, that was pretty good. Pretty good. Instinctively, you sort of move the ball a little further away from you, and you also put the ball further forward. That's great. So now, you can see where you are in this position here. What this also does, allows us now to have a little bit more weight on your left foot. I would advise that. Get your weight forward onto your left leg. Okay. Get your hands ahead slightly. Can you feel that? Mm-hmm. And now, your eyes are directly on top of the ball there, and you look much more comfortable. Much more comfortable. Now, all I'm trying to do at this point is set yourself up in a position where your shoulders, your forearms are all parallel to your target line. In other words, we line the putter face up, which we'll talk about in a little while. Line the putter face up and just get, say, your shoulders and your forearm, and certainly your knees and your feet pretty much all in line here. It's just like a regular golf swing. You find maybe some players might stand a little bit open, but I would say for the most part that you want to stand pretty square. As we saw, you were very, very open here, and it's very difficult there to make a good arm and shoulder stroke where the putter moves on a much straighter line. Well, now you have the nuts and bolts of the putting stroke. There really are only two aspects you have to concern yourself with. One is direction, and one is distance. Those are the only two things that can be right or can be wrong, Bill, so that's nice to know, isn't it?
It sure is.
Right, now, let's talk about the direction first, which means we have to understand what the face of the putter is doing and also the path of the putter head. Right, now, an interesting little drill here that I would like you to try is this, because this will really show you what actually happens sort of through impact and beyond. So what we're going to do, we're going to hit a few putts from about 2 feet, all right? So there we go. Now you set up to it there. Okay. Take your new setup here.
Regular grip and everything.
That's it, your new grip there. Finger down the back there, nice and relaxed. A little more weight left, remember? Good, there we go. The left eye directly on top of the ball. Okay, now, I don't want you to make a backswing at all. I want you just to simply swing the putter through, so I'll help you here. So let's go. Right, that was easy enough. You can see there, the face of the putter is now square to the hole. So what we're really trying to do through here is to make sure that through impact, that the putter face is nice and square and keep it traveling. So it's pretty much square through impact, straight through towards the hole. Right, do that again on your own. This is a very good drill, this one. Okay, well, let's step back here and hit a 6-foot putt.
All right.
Okay, let's come about a 6-foot distance here, Bill. Now, just take your address position there and address an imaginary ball. Okay, now, you watch what I'm going to do from here. As I move the shoulders, now remember, which we're going to get into just in a little while as far as the length of your stroke. Remember, this is not a very long putt, so it's a fairly short stroke in actual fact. But see, as I move the shoulders, the putter appears to move pretty straight back and through, doesn't it, on this length putt?
Right on the line.
That's right. So the shorter the putt, the straighter back and through that your putter will swing. You see, so we don't want to think in terms of trying to take it inside or outside or anything of that nature, but the shorter the putt, the more straight back and through we tend to swing it. There you go. Good. Now, let me just put a ball there. All right, and let's see how we do. So, what we're going to do, I'm going to work your shoulders for you once again. There we go. Boy, that was an excellent stroke. Now, you can feel as you do that, that your right hand really finishes towards the hole, as does the putter face. Obviously, the putter face has traveled down the line, square to the target line. But a good thought, a good feeling is to actually think in terms of your palm of your right hand, Bill, being your putter face. And that way, you know, when you're stroking the putt there, you're taking all your thoughts away from the putter head, which is actually pretty good. So you can sense where your right hand is, and that means you're releasing the putter down the line. Okay, so, well, let's wander back here now and show you what a 10-footer looks like, shall we? All right. Okay, once again, let me move the shoulders here, and we'll see as the stroke gets longer, as I make a little bigger movement with your shoulders, the putter starts to go more inside, doesn't it? See? There we go. Inside, but still pretty much straight down the line. Now, at home, you're not going to have a chalk line under normal circumstances. So what you can do, you can just get another club. We'll use my putter here. We'll lay it down on the line. Now, all you do is simply putt on top of that line. You see a lot of pros do this. In fact, you know, while they're waiting to putt, they're actually using the flagpole to actually as an indicator, you see. So there we go. That's it. So depending on the length of the stroke, that determines how much it goes inside. So, you get any idea of what the actual putter face is doing and the path should be doing? So we want the putter face obviously squared impact, and certainly we want to make sure that the putter moves fairly straight back and through on the short pass and more inside on the longer pass. You position the ball correctly, make the correct stroke, and you'll actually find that the putter face will actually hit the ball with a very slight ascending blow. So always remember that. So if somebody asks you where you're trying to hit the ball, you're trying to hit it slightly on the upswing. That's the best result for a good roll. What I'd like to talk about now, Bill, is really how we control the actual distance. In other words, the speed of the putt, which is so important. So let's show you here. Okay, now we've got a 5-footer right here, and so you'll establish how far you have to take the putter back through practice, and what you need to do is learn to hit putts from different distances. Okay, so let's have a look at this 5-footer here first of all and see if we can get the right pace on it. And the right pace, just one more thing, is the important thing is, remember, is that on most putts you want to try to finish a few inches past the hole, somewhere between, shall we say, 12 and 18 inches past the hole means that the ball is rolling at a good speed to go in. If you hit it any softer than that, the tendency is it might hit a spike mark or a heel print, which you might not see, but it doesn't hold its line as well. So we want to hit it fairly firm. I don't like to see the ball just dribble into the cup. Okay, so let's have a look here. So very short, compact stroke. As the putt gets longer, so our backswing extends and gets longer, and conversely, you'll find that the speed will be created through the length of the arc of the stroke, not by trying to actually hit hard and, as such. Now, we also have to take into account, remember, if we're going uphill or downhill, the speed of the green, in other words, the texture of the turf, if it's a very slick grass or it's a slow grass, that will also determine the length of our stroke. So remember, a 5-foot putt on one green might be a 20-foot putt on another green, depending on the speed. So we have to take that into account as well. But you really get that through practice, and if you play at your home course, normally you know the speed of your greens. So let's go through that again. Set up over it. Boom. Keep my head nice and still too.
Easy.
Now, there's one other element I want you to be aware of. You know, it's all well and good knowing the actual length of your stroke, but we also have to tie in a bit of rhythm with it. Okay, it's no good going back so slowly and then going slowly through. We must make sure that we have a nice even pace about the stroke. So in order to get the tempo of our stroke right, in other words, in order to have a good rhythm where the putter goes back and through, I actually like to think in terms of saying to myself, 1, 2, 1, 2. Even on a long putt, I'll go 1, 2. So if you can just have a good routine, which we will talk about, it's a case now of, right, trust your stroke, 1, 2, and knock it in.
It's a simple thought, I like that.
All right, let's have a go and see if we can get our 1, 2 action going here, shall we? So we set up over it, one look there, 1, 2. Easy.
Easy.
Ready to try?
Sure.
Okay. A 100% record here, Bill.
Much better.
Looking good. Well, now we're going to go back to the 20-footer and see how your stroke relates to that distance.
All right.
Now you'll see how your stroke will get a little bit longer on the 20-footer as opposed to the 5-footer, certainly. All right, so have a couple of practice strokes. Always a good idea to get the feel of the distance there. Remember, the follow-through and the backswing are pretty much the same length. Okay, that looks good. All right, now just visualize the putt. Pretty straight, this putt, so no real problem. Oh, I say.
How about that?
How about that one? Okay. Now, come on, prove it wasn't a fluke. 1, 2. Pretty good. Could have been a little bit firmer there, so maybe a little bit longer stroke there. 1, 2. Much better though. You see the ball's rolling so much better. Doesn't it feel better coming off the putter face?
Much solid. It's easier to control the speed, hitting it in the same place every time.
Right, and you see you're getting a uniform roll, which is crucial. All right, let's get back to the 40-footer.
All right.
Now we're going to check out the long putts here, Bill, and see if we can get a little more consistency in this area, shall we?
Sure.
Okay, now, let me just show you a couple of things here. I'm going to imagine I've got about a 90-footer, and you just watch the length of my stroke here. You see, so it's not important to try to actually hit it hard. The important thing is to have a nice long stroke where you can create the speed through the actual stroke.
Sure, okay.
Okay? Right, now, let's have a look here at this 40-footer. And what I always like to do on these strokes, on these putts here, any longish putt, is try to imagine that we've got say a 2-foot ring around the hole there, trying to get it within that area. I mean, that's a good mental image to have. Okay? So here we go. I'm trying to picture the stroke here, picture the length of my stroke for the particular distance, and let's see how we do. Whoops. Close.
He pulled it.
All right, have a go, Bill.
All right.
Amazing different feel that you have off the putter face. The other thing is too, you can see you look so much more relaxed. There's no tension there now. It's like the weight of the putter is actually swinging there. So remember, a little tip I always feel, which is a good one, is never to strangle the putter. Always grip it fairly lightly. I should be able to almost pull the putter out of your hand here. Okay, so in that way you'll find that the putter head will swing freely. Okay, so that's looking a lot better. Much better. So now, I think what we'll do now, we've got 2 little drills for you to try, which can really improve your putting and everybody else's as well.
Great, let's get to them.
Okay. Now, this is the first drill, Bill, which is really good. Remember, you mentioned to me you were a little bit nervous on those 3-footers. Now, I believe the major reason that people miss those 3-footers is because they peak. They actually are trying to steer and guide the ball in. So, right, now, let's show you how this one works. We'll get from about 3 feet away. I'm going to put this coin down here, okay, and just bury it in, submerge it just a little bit. I'm going to put the ball on top of it. Now, the idea is that I want you to make sure that you stroke the putt and keep your eyes focused on the coin underneath the ball, okay?
Right.
So I don't want your eyes to follow the ball. In other words, you'll be listening for the ball to go in the hole and actually watching the coin.
Okay.
Okay, so go ahead. Right, keep your 1-2 thought going there in your mind. There you go. Now, you can still see yourself focusing on the coin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Did the ball go in the center of the hole?
The ball went right in the middle, Bill. I wouldn't lie to you. Okay. Just make sure your weight's on your left side there, okay? That's it, just check. Right, good. Now, focus on the coin. Very good. So that's an excellent drill for you to work on. Okay, I've got one further drill.
All right.
Now, this is a little interesting exercise here, Bill, and let me demonstrate first. And it's simply a case of learning to use our right hand, right arm, and right shoulder to release the putter. You know, we get so much feel from our right hand. Most of us who play right-handed, in actual fact, are right-handed, so we get a lot of feel here. And if you remember earlier, I told you as far as the direction was concerned, you actually focus on your right hand almost being the face of your putter, or the palm of your right hand being the face of your putter. So a good exercise is to really learn to putt with your right hand and right arm, and what this will do will give you this sensation of releasing the putter. Although we want an arm and shoulder stroke, we do want to sense that the weight of the putter does move. So there will be, as I've said to you, a little bit of lag in the stroke. Okay, so remember that. So we want to feel that the right shoulder moves back and forward, we keep it moving, and you'll get a great sensation of rolling the ball. Let's have a go, shall we?
All right.
Right, give it a go, Bill.
All right.
Well, pretty good there, Bill. Just a matter of practicing it, and you'll start to feel a great sensation of releasing the putter, and it'll really help your rhythm as well. A large part of putting is routine. Once you can trust your stroke, you have to have a good routine. So what we've done here, we've chosen a fairly tough putt here, and it's a big breaking putt. You can see it's not a nice one at all. And what I'm trying to visualize here is how the putt will actually swerve to the hole. And you want to try to picture your apex, in other words, the apex of the curve, and we've got a T down here to mark that apex, and try to sense that I'm actually putting to the apex, and then really it's just a question of speed and distance.
Okay.
Right, so let me just go through a little routine here, and this is something which, if you haven't got a routine, now do you have one?
Not at all.
Most players don't. And most players, they do things differently behind the ball. So you want to try to do the same thing each time. So what I'm doing from back here is really I'm getting a feel for the putt and also visualizing the line that the ball's going to roll on. So I'm going to walk around it now. Have one or two more practice strokes. Right, walk up to it. Got my point in mind. Just relax, visualize it, and hit the putt.
Good putt.
Well, that was a good putt. Now remember, everybody's routine can vary. What I suggest you do is just simply get on the putting green and work one out for yourself. It's a lot of fun. Well, back to our famous chalk line here, Bill. We're going to see how you roll it.
All right.
Now, just before you do this, let's just summarize very briefly. So we've gone through getting you set up to the ball properly, including a good grip. Okay, we want you to make sure you practice that posture, that set-up position, in order that you can get the feeling of that naturally. We then spoke in terms of the actual shoulder and arm movement that we are trying to accomplish. We spoke about the direction, didn't we? How the putter face moves fairly straight back and through on a short putt, and then inside as the putt gets longer. And then we really spoke about the actual distance, how the length of your stroke controls the distance of the putt. A little bit of feel, talked about your routine, gave you a couple of drills. So you've really got some good things to practice on, and really if you can practice it, many people just don't spend enough time on the putting green. If you can do that, my goodness, you'll chop so many shots off your score. So right, well, let's see how you accomplish this little task here and see how you roll the ball, shall we?
All right.
Well, the biggest compliment I can give you, Bill, is great roll.
Thank you, David.
When I'm working with the tour players with their putting, the thing I'm constantly referring to is feel. Certainly technique is important, but feel is even of greater importance. Now, a drill that I really like to work with them on is this one, where I'm actually putting to a tee from about 20 feet. Now, that's not so unusual in itself, but the drill here is that it requires you to actually hit putts, first of all, looking at the hole, or the tee in this case, and secondly, making the putt with your eyes closed. The third putt you hit, you actually make your regular stroke. So you see, by looking at the hole and putting with your eyes closed, you recreate the sensation in your mind that you actually need when you get over the putt itself. So let me show you how it works. So the first one here, what I'm going to do is set up to it, look at the hole, and make my stroke. Second one, I'm going to look at the tee here again, which represents my hole, keep my eyes closed, and make the stroke. That was a good one. And the third one, I'm going to make my regular stroke here and try to recreate the same feel that I got from the previous two putts. Now, if you practice this drill, you'll be amazed at how your feel will improve. So go to it. We're approaching the green here, Bill, so we're going to talk a little bit about chipping now. Okay? Now, I think the thing that we really have to discuss is what a chip is. So I think many people probably maybe misdefine a chip. There is a difference between a chip and a pitch in my terminology anyway. A chip, I feel, is one that has less carry and more roll, and a pitch is generally one which is lofted. So having defined what a chip is, and most chips are certainly close to the green, why don't you go ahead and hit 3 shots of these 3 flags. Now, we've got one here at 25 feet, one at 70 feet, and we've got one all the way up the back tier there at 100 feet. So we've got a few selections for you, so we're going to see what you can do with them.
Okay. All right. If I take a wedge for the first one here?
Well, you tell me. I'm not going to tell you.
Well, probably. It's short. And
all right, I'll hold on to your club for you.
Thank you.
Quite good. All right. Let's go for the long one now, please. Bill, well, I actually wanted you to go to the second flag.
I was trying to.
Oh, all right. Sorry about that. Okay, now we'll go to the third one. Okay, so we've got the 100-foot.
About my 8-iron, I think that might be a better club to roll it.
Little shallower divot on this next one too, Bill.
Okay.
All right, well, not quite there, but the idea was right. You know, Bill, with chipping, there's a lot of versatility involved and a lot of individuality as well. A lot of great short game players have slightly different techniques. But really the thing is to find some way that you can get the ball close to the hole on a regular basis. Now, generally speaking, certainly what we want to try to do with any chip shot is have maximum roll. You know, as much as we can roll the ball, probably it's a lot easier to judge it that way. We don't want to try to loft it unless we really have to. It's a lot easier simply to roll it than it is to actually throw it up in the air. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to show you how I can actually play, say, 4 different shots to one hole, but we'll talk about judgment and why I would choose a particular shot. Okay? All right, so you want to watch me here? Now, you know, chipping is, as I say, it's an art. And probably these days, many golf courses really take away the art of chipping, but I think it's so important to understand exactly what happens and how you can make the ball react in the way that you want it to react. Remember, visualization is the big key here.
Sure.
All right, now the first one I'm going to hit a sand wedge, and I'm going to loft the ball up to the hole. Okay, so see how we do on that one. Pretty good. Now I'm going to take the wedge. Okay, now the 8-iron. And finally, the putter. Well, they all work pretty well, Bill, so how am I going to choose out of that lot?
I don't know, but any choice you make, it's going to be right next to the hole.
So what I'm trying to show you right here, that there are options, and these options are important. Judgment is such a big factor in knowing what club to use in order to get the ball close. Now, there are 2 basic chipping actions that I talk about, and they are both wristless. In other words, we have very little wrist action, very little conscious wrist action in the stroke, because the more wrist action that you have, you know, your tendency to sort of scoop it like this, tends to create loft, the face gets up in the air and sends the ball up. So we want to try to keep the hands and arms very firm when we play this stroke. It's almost like an extension of your putting stroke to a large extent. And that's the first one we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about what I call the chip putt, which is very, very close to your putting stroke. Now for this chip putt, I'm going to take an 8-iron. I've selected the club. Worked for me last time, so hopefully it'll do so again, Bill. Now, I think the thing is, what I'm really trying to do is create this image in my mind. I'm visualizing what's going to happen to the ball in order to get it close. Now let me show you the technique here with this chip putt. It is very, very close to your putting method. That's really why we work with putting first and work backwards, you see. So now I'm going to set up to it here. I want you to note I'm going to take my putting grip. I'm going to get pretty close to the ball here. I'm going to get my eyes very much on top of the ball, but the only difference really being is I'm going to position the ball further back in my stance. Now, in setting up to it, I want my hands forward, and I also want to be ahead of the ball. You can see my weight is ahead. If I hang this club down from my chest, you see it actually appears on the left side of the ball. So we want to make sure that you're actually ahead of it slightly. It almost feels like my right eye's on top of the ball, whereas in putting, my left eye's on top. So a little bit more weight on your left side there. Your hands are ahead. Also, you get your hands fairly high, and if the heel of the club sits slightly off the ground, well, that's fine. Okay, because in actual fact, if you strike the ball off the toe here, it'll deaden the roll. See, the key is with any chip shot to be able to control the speed of your roll. All great chippers are able to control the speed of the roll. You don't want to either hit it hard or soft. You want to be able to hit the right club that's going to roll the ball the correct distance. Now, so here we are. I've got my eyes over the ball, my hands are ahead, and I'm going to get my shoulders swinging just as I was in my putting stroke there. And the other thing probably which is slightly different, remember I'm hitting down it slightly because the ball's back in my stance, and I want a fairly short follow through. I don't want this left wrist breaking down. Note how my elbows are set. You see my elbows are spread out in order to keep my arms swinging and to get my arms and shoulders working together. I don't want any hand or wrist action in this stroke. Very important to keep the wrists out of it. Let's go ahead and hit one here. Ball further back here than normal, as opposed to a putting stroke. Right eye over the ball, and then try to stay very still on it. Now you can see the ball reacts very well. In other words, it rolls slowly. It doesn't really get away from me. That's what I like about this shot. I like it especially if I'm on a little downhill shot and the ball's likely to roll pretty fast. I really like this shot. So why don't you go ahead and hit one for me there, right, and we'll just show you the technique. Take your 8-iron if you would. Now, just have a couple of practice strokes here first.
So take my putting grip.
Yeah, your putting grip. Hands ahead a little bit more. That's it. Right, so I'm just going to push you this way. Remember, so if I hang my club from your chest there, it's hanging down forward of the ball, to the left of the ball. Now just use your shoulders. Short follow through. That's it, keep very still. Okay, now picture the shot. Important with all your short shots to do this. And off you go. Okay, not bad. Now, you just fell into a little trap that many players do. I'm sure you felt you snagged the club going back, didn't you?
I caught it on the grass.
That's right. The important thing as you swing it back, Bill, is that the club actually moves off the ground fairly quickly, so it makes a descending blow. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you a little drill which will really help you. Let me just move these clubs out of the way. There we go. Right, now just set up to a ball, please. I'm just going to lie that club opposite your right foot there. Okay, so we're about 3 to 4 inches behind the ball. Now what that will make you do as you set up to it is actually swing it back. You'll see you'll have to avoid the club behind you. You have to move the shoulder up in the air. Can you feel that?
Yeah.
That's it. Now that's very important. That's a good little drill to work on. Many players, I see many amateurs take the club away too low and scoop it there. So you need to have a slightly rising stroke as it goes back there and then swing down into it. Okay, so there we go. So look good. Pretty good. You're getting a feel for this. Now remember, certainly the speed of the green we have to take into account, and also the distance. Now, if we were going to go to that next flag, let's try the same club and see what happens, shall we?
All right.
I'll move that one. So that's a good little drill to work on sometimes, Bill, just to make sure that you're doing it right. You don't have to have the club down there all the time, but it's a good checkpoint.
I like that method.
Well, what do you think about that one?
Yeah, I felt like I had to hit it pretty hard to get it back to that flag.
That's right. So You know, you have a choice here. You can use one club and make a bigger swing and hit it, or otherwise you could make a more sensible choice probably and, say, take a 6-iron.
Why don't we try that?
All right. So it might be a 6-iron, might be a 5. Let's have a look. This is where experimentation comes in. You have to practice these different shots, Bill, and the thing is, you get to know your distances through practice. You know, you've got to stand around a practice green there and put balls in different places to get the feel, see? Okay. Now you see, because it had less loft on the club, the ball rolled better.
A little offline, but much better speed.
You see, so you can see how being versatile and by using the correct selection and using the proper judgment, you can actually start to get the ball close.
That's great.
All right, now look, here's a teaser. We've got that one 100 feet away, up that tier. Now that's a particularly difficult shot there. Okay, now watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to select a 4-iron. What do you think about that?
I never would have thought of choosing a 4-iron.
Well, you know, there's many ways to get the ball close, and this is what I said at the beginning, versatility. Now, the reason I'm selecting a 4-iron is because I want maximum roll here. I'm going to aim it fairly straight there, and hopefully the breaks will counteract one another, and just make a good stroke and see how close we can get the ball. Same technique that we've just worked on. We're going to go back about 5 paces, say 15 feet here. And originally we were 10, we're now, say, 25 feet off the edge of the green. So what are we going to do here, Bill?
Well, before, using this method, I chipped with an 8-iron up there. And we have a little more grass to carry this time. Perhaps I ought to use a wedge.
That's absolutely right. Because if you used an 8-iron, by the time it bounced on the green, it would be moving at such a speed it would go way by, wouldn't it? And the golden rule really is when you're chipping is to make sure that your first bounce is on the green. It's much easier to judge it. Okay, well, use a wedge and go ahead.
Thank you.
But always make your practice strokes.
Now, when we're this far from the green, it's still the same technique, isn't it?
Same technique, obviously a little bigger swing. Okay, and the ball will certainly get up in the air a little bit more, but that's fine. Well done. That's good. Now, how about the second flag, which is 70 feet on the green?
Well, before we were using a club that got it to roll, and we have more green to carry, so I probably ought to use 8-iron from here rather than wedge.
That's right, exactly. So, now, certainly you used a 6-iron from up there, didn't you? But if you used a 6-iron, the same principle would apply, that when it bounced on the green, it would be rolling too hard. So you always want to use a club that you feel is going to roll the ball slowly once it actually hits the green.
All right.
Okay, so try the 8-iron there.
All right, thank you.
Now, you've got to make a slightly bigger swing here, certainly for these longer shots, but the general rule, Bill, is the further you get away from the green when you're chipping, the more lofted a club you're going to use.
Okay.
Ooh,
I really,
good one.
really think I'm starting to get the hang of this.
All right, so let's go back to where we were originally. And I'm going to talk to you about what I call the regular chip shot. Now, you know how we've spoken about in the full swing how the body controls the club, or the dog wags the tail? Now, the same principle applies here. Really, the less wrist we can have in this shot, the better, as we've spoken about before. Now, as with the chip putt method, we went pretty much straight back and through. Obviously, it would work inside a little bit on the longer stroke. But this one here, it is a case of moving the club around the body. Let me show you what I mean by that. If I hold the club with my right hand here, what I'm going to do, I'm going to set myself open, and we'll talk about that just in a second. But all I'm going to do as I move my body back and forward, you can see, look at the arc that my hand scribes here. Can you see that? Watch what happens. I'm going to release the ball now. So you see the movement of my body controls the way that I release the ball there. And it's going to be the same thing when I put the golf club in my hand. I'm going to set up to it in a way that as I turn my body back and through, the club really responds to the way that my body is turning. So certainly it's not as big a turn as we normally would have in a full swing. It's just a little short turn back and through. But nevertheless, we are using the body to control the release. So let's talk about the exact technique here and show you what happens. First of all, we want to set ourselves in a position where our feet are looking somewhere. If the flag was on, say, a 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock line, my feet are aiming somewhere about 11. Okay? Now, I also want you to think in terms of pointing the club face towards 1 o'clock. Okay, so we've got basically our body and the club face opposing one another. All right? Now, I want you to grip the club strongly, and this is important. Watch how many knuckles I have on my left hand here. You find many great chippers of the ball place their left hand strongly on the club. It just helps to give your left hand control through the shot. Remember, we're not trying to use the wrist, so we're not likely to turn the club over, so there's no problem of hooking it or anything. So you can see here, my left hand is strong, my feet are open, the club face is aimed to the right, and I put the ball off my right foot, just inside my right heel here. And I have my hands well ahead of the ball. You can see if I let the club go, it would just lie on my thigh like so. Now it looks strange because initially when you look at it, you'll think, my goodness, I'm going to hit the ball way to the right. But this isn't the case, because you see, as you swing the club back through the turning of your body, you can see my hands, by being forward here, I've already preset any sort of wrist cock. I don't have to use my wrist because look at the angle right here at the back of my wrist. This is a key angle right here. We don't want to lose that angle. But you can see from here, as I move my body back, all I'm going to do is turn the club back. You can see it moves inside slightly. And as I turn through, the turning of my body will square the face off. Now, you just watch the pace here. I'm going to show you a little technique here to test if you've done it correctly. So, right, now if I bring the club back, I should be in the same position as I was at address. Now I'm going to hit a shot to that 70-foot flag, Bill. I'm going to take my 8-iron, and what I'm going to attempt to do is to make the same swing that I just did with the wedge. So my wedge was a good distance for that particular pin here, this first one. Now let's make the same swing here with the 8-iron, and we'll see what happens. Oh, that was close. Thought that was going in. Now, if there was a flag in the middle here, I would probably select a 9-iron. Now, if I took my 9-iron, I can actually judge through practice how far I hit each shot. All right, so let's just take the 9-iron out, make the same technique. And I always feel a good sensation as my right hand never breaks down, so I feel it when I finish the stroke. And stay nice and still on it too. You don't want to move your head. So that's somewhere in the middle of the two flags. So you can see very simply, one swing with different clubs produces different results. That's why I'm a big fan of varying your club. Once again, we're going to go back to our 25-foot range. In other words, 25 foot off the edge of the green, and we're going to that terrible one right up top there, that 100-footer. You know, when we're talking in terms of hitting a more aggressive shot, there's some feel involved here. Now, certainly, as I spoke about, trying to make one swing for all clubs is great, but when we start to get a little further away, now is the time when we're going to start to be a little bit more aggressive. So in order to be more aggressive, probably here I would use maybe a 7 or an 8-iron, or probably a 7-iron. I think a 7-iron is going to be a good club. But in order for me to hit the ball a little firmer, in order to carry a little further, remember, most chip shots are probably going to be within 10 feet, 3 or 4 paces off the green. But this one, this chip and run from this distance, I've got to carry quite a bit more turf here to get onto the green. So the way we go about this, Bill, is to make sure that we keep the same motion going, but what I'm going to feel now is I'm going to really increase my rotational speed. In other words, if this was my normal speed with a 7-iron, or with any swing for that matter, this is now going to be my speed. You can see, you can hear the actual increase in the club head speed, but I'm doing it with my body. Okay, right, now let me hit one here. Focusing on my rotational speed.
Great shot.
Bill, I'm telling you, if you do what I tell you, you can do the same thing.
You want to do it again?
No, thank you. Anyway, let's just summarize here what we've been through. So this one we've just played here is obviously the regular chip shot. We're using a little more aggression, a little more rotation, have a little more increase of speed. But simply, we want to set up to it in a way that we're setting open with our body, club face is aimed to the right, and above all else, the body is controlling the shot there. As I say, this angle is very important as far as I'm concerned. Don't lose that angle. The other system we spoke about was the chip putt method, which is very similar to your putting action. Simply you put the ball a little further back in the stance, but use your normal putting technique, arms and shoulders, and once again, understand how the club reacts. I've got 18 feet to carry to the green and about 60 feet of green. So I want the ball to roll. Now for this longer shot, I've taken a wedge because the sharper leading edge will actually help it to dig into the grass. Remember, we want to use the grass as a cushion. I make contact with the grass, the ball then shoots out with a lot of overspin, so it will roll pretty well. Now the thing is, when I play this shot, I want to choke down almost to the metal here, to the end of the grip, and pick the club up very steeply with a sharp wrist break. And then simply just let the club fall onto the turf. I don't want any follow through. I almost feel like I'm going to actually let go of the club. I almost loosen my grip very slightly as the club makes contact with the turf. So I set up to it, weight on the front foot, hands ahead, pick the club up and just let the club fall onto the turf. And you'll see how the ball just simply rolls up to the flag. Grip it very lightly. Just let the club fall and you'll see the ball will just shoot on out up to the flag. We're in the pitching area here, Bill. So an important area, certainly for the tour players, because on par 5, this is an area they usually land up in, say, few yards short of the green, anywhere up to maybe 60 yards at times, and certainly they expect to get it down in 2, in other words, a pitch and a putt. And for amateurs, it's also important because on a lot of the long par 4s, they need to be able to pitch it up close in order to make their par. So an extremely important part of the game. The first pin I'd like you to aim for, Bill, is the one at the back of the green. We have about 50 yards here, and certainly this is a pitch shot in as much that we've got to loft it up to get it over this bunker. We can't run it up, can we? Certainly. So why don't you have a go at the 50-yarder there? Now, I'll tell you what, Bill, why don't you go for the short one here? We have about 35 yards to the pin.
All right.
And the greens are reasonably soft. I'll give you that little hint, all right?
Okay.
Not too bad. I think if we can give you a little better understanding of the pitching technique, you can really improve your pitching.
Great.
Now, certainly, Bill, from this area here, I would recommend a sand wedge. Now, there's some players, maybe some ladies that don't have quite the strength, might have to use a pitching wedge, but a sand wedge for most people from this distance is perfect. And if you get used to a sand wedge and practice with it, you can really get good at it. Now, what I'm going to do here is just demonstrate a little bit of what I see in your pitching action. And first thing I'd like to do is let you know that the pitching swing is really a mini golf swing. Now, as you know, with the full swing, we've described how the body actually controls it. See, your pitching swing tends to be a little bit like your old swing, where you used to just take it back with your arms and really your body wasn't involved. So we're going to show you how your body can actually control how far you hit it and how consistently you hit it. Now, the first thing I saw was that when you set up to the ball, you were very square, which is okay with a full swing, certainly, but remember, although it's close to a full swing, there are some slight variations. So the first thing we need to do is get you set more open. So we're going to get the setup position correct. Now don't worry, I'm not going to aim at any particular target at this point in time. I'm just aiming for the green. That gives me a big enough target to aim at. All right. I feel comfortable setting myself open here. You can see I've got the ball positioned, just forward of middle. I set my knees in a little bit towards the target. I want to be balanced here. Okay, you're very square here with your knees. I want you to get your hands a little bit more forward too. You can see as I set my hands here, I'm really looking like I'm in a ready position. In actual fact, I feel like I'm setting up to the ball like I would like to be almost at impact. That's the feeling I have anyway. See, if you're too square like this, you've got to do a lot of things in order to get into that impact position. Right, now, in your case, we saw just the arms swinging here, the arms going back and the arms going through, very little body motion. So as we've described all along with the full swing, we want the body to move. We want it to control the way the club moves. Certainly, we have to feel the club cocking up here. We don't want to just take it back here and be stiff-wristed, but we need to feel as we swing the club back and through, the weight of the club actually sets our wrist. All right, so you with me up to this point?
So far.
Okay, so this turning motion, I say, is very important. We just don't want to swing the arms because to me it looks like if you want to hit it harder, you just try to hit the ball harder. We have to make sure that what happens back here happens through here. Very symmetrical in the looks, backswing and follow through. So you can see with these two different distances, we will be able to control the distance by the length of our swing, which means how much turn we actually have. Okay, the turning of the body controls the length of the arm swing in both directions. So let me show you here, and you can have a good look at this. So once again, I'm setting myself up here. Feel I have maybe 60% of my weight on my left side. My hands are ahead, and as I swing it back, I focus on trying to turn my navel, just as I would in the full swing, and keep my arms and my body together. Now, I'm just going to hit a smooth shot here, not really focusing on the distance initially, making the turn. Now you can see pretty much my backswing and my follow-through are the same length. Right. Rhythm is very important here, Bill. We don't want to get jerky or tight on it. One little exercise that I like to show people to do so they don't get too handsy, so they do get the club up what I call on its end, is to actually just split your grip. You don't have to hit balls doing it, but you just split your grip, swing it back. You can see the club points down here. Okay, the butt of the club points down. And as I swing through, it points down in this direction. You see, so that avoids this tendency that many players have to get the club going too far around them and around them this way. Remember, the angle and the arc that the club swings on with the wedge is very much more up and down. Because the shaft is more upright than any other club in our bag, it's going to be steeper up and down. All right, so we don't want to try to swing it too far around, otherwise we get a poor angle onto the ball.
Okay.
Get the idea?
I think I've got it.
Right, now what I want you to do, I want you to come over here and I want you to just hit some shots to the green. Not a target in particular, we'll just aim sort of at the middle of the green. All right?
All right.
Right, you go ahead. Well, let's see.
I want to have the ball a little bit forward, correct?
Forward.
And I'm going to stand open.
Open. Now, because we're not really aiming at anything particular, let me just lie this club down on the ground. That's going about at the middle of the green. So you just stand a little bit open to the club. Your feet are going to be certainly open to